It has been a busy couple of days down here in Palm Beach, Florida at the NFL owners meetings. I'm Dave Zangaro, joined by Ruben Frank, the Eagle Eye Podcast. Rube, how you doing?
And when Dave says busy, he means surfing, skydiving, snorkeling, swimming. What else?
I have done nothing fun since I've been here. I can promise you that. It's a nice place to work. It's pretty here. Palm trees everywhere. The ocean is in the background, but it is a busy few days. It's the only time in the calendar year where we hear from the Eagles owner, their general manager, and their head coach. So a lot to get to today.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Let's get to it. No questions today, no time to answer questions, but we promise our next pod will be a mailbag. We want to catch up. We're kind of flooded with those emails, so we'll get to that, I promise. But let's kind of start with what has been the talk of the owners' meetings this year, and it's clearly the Tush Push. And it's been the talk not just among Eagle circles, but really in the NFL. And here's the update on it. Basically, it got tabled on Tuesday. So it was going to come for a vote. But whenever you hear something gets tabled, it basically means they didn't have the votes in their favor. And you don't let anyone vote on it officially if you don't have the votes. You table it and you change the wording. And that's what's happening here.
Yeah. So explain how they're going to change the wording and what the ramifications are of that.
Yeah, so basically the wording from the Packers proposal was very ambiguous. It really was kind of strange, and that's one of the reasons I suspected it would not pass this week down here. And I also didn't get the sense that it had enough support, but it seems like what ultimately is going to happen is they're going to change the wording to go back to the NFL rule pre-2004 where there was no pushing or pulling. I think that has support from the league itself. I know Commissioner Roger Goodell was talking about that. So, look, I think eventually it probably is going to pass. They're going to change the wording. They're going to rally a little bit. And then in May, when the next league meetings come up, I think it has a much better chance of passing. But I give the Eagles credit. They're not backing down from this, whether it's Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, especially Jeffrey Lurie. And they shouldn't back down on this because I got to be honest with you, being here this week, I think a lot of these teams are really disingenuous with the way they've gone about this because what the Packers cited in this proposal were two things. One was player safety, other was pace of play. And the player safety aspect of this just isn't real. There were no injuries on the play in 2024. And Sean McDermott, who's on the competition committee, former Eagles coach, now the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, talked about being proactive with this to prevent future injuries, which, like, what kind of world are we living in where we're like, that doesn't make any sense. There's no hard data to support it. So the Eagles should be mad. And then we find out from Rich McKay, who's the competition committee chairman, that the health and safety was only a small part of the debate inside the meeting room on Tuesday. A lot of it was about the look of the play, about the aesthetics of it, which is such a bait and switch from some of these teams, because that really gets down to what the heart of the issue is, right? Is that some people think it's not a football play. They call it a rugby play. And to ban a rule that benefits one team because they've figured out how to utilize a loophole and to make it work for them without legitimate health and safety concerns is kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah, it is. And it really reeks of jealousy. The Eagles won a Super Bowl. They're really good at the play. Nobody else is that good at the play. So anytime you have a rule change that's directed toward one really successful team, then the motives are disingenuous. The motivation of, and look, I consider myself friends with Sean McDermott, but I couldn't disagree with him more on this. The motivation is clearly they're better than us. Let's try to even the playing field. So they don't score as many points, and so they're not as good on offense, and so they're not able to score at will from the 1 yard line or convert on 4th and 1. It's the only reason teams are doing this. That's the only reason teams want this play outlawed, is because the Eagles are good at it and they're not, and it's obvious. And if that does happen, it's a shame. I still think the Eagles are going to be really good at goal line and short yardage, but you're right. The motivation is just come out and say, you know what? They're better than us at it. They're really good. They just won a Super Bowl. They're going to win a bunch of games next year. We don't want them to be as good as they are. So let's try to backdoor some way to take something away from their offense. They can't take away Saquon. They can't take away Jalen's passing and running ability. They can't take away AJ and Devontae. What can we take away? Well, let's take away the play that they're really good at.
Yeah, and look, if there were like medical experts who came out and said, yeah, the data's not there, but we think it could be a danger, maybe I'd listen to that. But without that, I don't understand it. And Jeffrey Lurie went as far as to say he thinks the tush push and the way the Eagles run it is actually safer than the traditional quarterback sneak. And in fairness, we don't have any data to support that either, I guess, maybe because it is the small sample size and no one got hurt on it last year. So how can we have a safer play than it? But I give the Eagles credit for fighting this with everything they have. And they have allies. I mean, they certainly do. According to reports, it was split right down the middle at these owners meetings. And, and that was kind of the sense I got this week. It really did feel like the opinions were split based on some of the coaches, some of the front office people I spoke with this week. And look, the Eagles have allies, and Nick Sirianni was lobbying. I think Howie Roseman was lobbying. I think Jeffrey Lurie was lobbying. And it's true that, head coaches don't vote. It's the owners who vote, but they're going to listen to their coaches. They're going to listen to the other people in their organization. So lobbying at every level can work. Like I said, I ultimately think in May, it's more likely than not that it gets banned, but they're not going down without a fight.
Yeah, and Lurie's point about the tush push being safer than a normal sneak is that the quarterback, Jalen, is protected. He's more protected from defensive players than he is on a conventional sneak. And I'm not going to disagree. And I think you touched on, Jeff Lurie's been an owner of this team. He's been an owner for 31 years now. Bought the team in '94. Howie's been a GM since 2010, minus 1 year. They both have a lot of friends, a lot of close allies, especially Jeff Lurie. He's really highly thought of in that world, and he's close with a lot of owners. And look, Howie's made trades with every team multiple times. I think he's got a lot of good relationships in that GM world. Nick, maybe not so much. I'm not sure. He's got
allies. He has
Arizona, Indianapolis, and New Orleans. He does,
and Cleveland.
Kevin
Stefanski came out and said he's in favor of keeping the play.
Yeah, he did. Well, yeah, and it'd be surprising if they do joint practices with somebody that wants it banned, but we'll see. But yeah, it just bugs me that they didn't pass it, and they're really, all they're going to do is clarify some language, and then they're going to pass it. I don't get that. And
well, in fairness, like that is the way a lot of these things end up, is that, they kind of get a sense, there's like a straw poll basically in the meeting room, and they get a sense of whether or not it actually has a chance to pass. And if it doesn't, they table it and they say, well, let's rework it and figure out a way to make it work.
What they're going to do is really functionally no different than what was proposed. Are there any?
Well, the wording of like immediately after the snap over the center, it left a lot of gray area. Whereas if they kind of just change the rule and go back to pre-2004, no pushing, no pulling, that takes care of it. I don't know, but the part of the aesthetics, and for the chairman of the competition committee to come out and say that a big part of the debate was about aesthetics, and this is not like a knock on Rich McKay. He's luckily he's the one telling us what happened in this meeting. I thought Jeffrey Lurie had a good point. I asked him about the aesthetics of the play because it was very clear that it was not just about health and safety. He brought up the fact that like at one point a forward pass was not thought to be football, right? So I just hate the idea that you can arbitrarily decide what is and what is not a football play without within the confines of the rules. And the Eagles are now going to be punished because they found a really cool loophole and a play that works for them, unlike it works for anyone else.
Yeah, Jeff was funny. He said he remembers reading that they were going to allow the forward pass. It happened in 1933. So I'm not sure he actually read about that, but yeah, I mean, football was once very, very different. You've seen old videos of those days. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, I think it's kind of inevitable that at some point that'll happen. I really don't think it's going to have a dramatic effect. I mean, you still have a quarterback with the most powerful legs in the business, and you have Mulata and Jurgens and Dickerson, and whoever's at right guard is going to be large, and Lane. They're still going to be able to be very effective, I would think, on the goal line. Maybe not 90, 95%, but 80%. So we might be talking about a couple plays a year that they don't get it, which is significant, but not it's not the end of the world. It's just the motivation is what really bugs me.
Yeah, it's lame. It just is. And I thought Sirianni did a good job talking about the play a little bit. And he also put a little jab in there and said, he's like, I think I heard someone say that Bart Starr ran the play, of course, the legendary Packers quarterback. The Packers, the team that proposed the rule change. And look, the Packers aren't alone. They're going to be the scapegoat here because they're the ones who put their name on it. But I think this rule was eventually going to come back up again. It was the change was proposed 2 years ago, and it didn't even get this far. It was withdrawn without the support. But if there's support within the competition committee, that's when things start to change. And I think that's the way ultimately this is going to go. Nick Sirianni on Tuesday was asked how he thinks his team will fare if they have to go back to just a regular QB sneak. And it was very funny because he said, I don't do hypotheticals, but we'd be really good at it. So he did a hypothetical. And I think that's true. I think that, and we've talked about this, how much does the push element really matter? I think it helps. There's no question that it helps, and they've figured out a way to make it work. But I also don't think that's the engine that makes that play go.
Yeah, I agree. It's Jalen. I think that's the number one. Obviously, the O-line is a huge part of it. But for me, the big difference is there's not a quarterback in the league. There's not a quarterback alive who has the lower body power that he has, that strength and that ability to just keep moving forward. And he's also he's slippery down there. I mean, he's got great vision, and he knows the angles, and like that'll change a little bit. But I just think he's got a great knack down at the goal line, and I don't think that's going to change. I'll tell you what, when they run a conventional sneak and score at the link, the place is going to go nuts. It's going to be like, it's going to be fun. But yeah, it's unfortunate. We'll see what happens in May, and but it does look like it's headed that way.
Yeah, and look, I think the offensive line is a really big part of it too. Like you have a center, whether it's Jason Kelce or Cam Jurgens, who understands leverage, and that's really kind of for me where it starts. And that's another reason why the wording of the rule behind center didn't really make sense, because you watch Jalen, you mentioned he has a good knack with figuring out where to go. A lot of times it's behind the guard, or he'll slice this way or that way. He just has a good feel for understanding where the pocket that he can sneak in there is going to come from. So yeah, I think they're going to be a really good team, but it's ruffling some feathers this week. It was a fun week with this proposal on the board, and like some lines were drawn. It was contentious at times.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and Andy Reid was on the competition committee for a long, long time. I don't ever remember a rule change that was really directed toward one team. I don't remember that ever happening. Maybe it happened in the 70s or 60s. Maybe it happened before. I don't remember it ever happening, and because of that, I think it really stinks.
Yeah, and Rich McKay talked about that even going into this week, is that the competition committee doesn't like that. They don't like to have rules or rule proposals that adversely affect one or two or three teams, and this is clearly one of those.
Yeah, that quote really struck me. It's a really strong comment, and I don't know if it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, it might not. Some other rule changes this week. Touchbacks, the dynamic kickoff is going to stay. They like where it's at. The only difference is this year, the touchback goes from the 30 to the 35. The idea there is it's going to create more kick returns. They were already up last year, and the idea here is that it's going to encourage teams to kick it into that landing zone and not put it through the back of the end zone. Look, I think the play looks a little goofy because it's not what we're used to, but ultimately, if it creates more kickoffs and it keeps that play a part of the game, they said it looks like the injury rate on a kickoff this year was about what it is on a run or a pass, which was the goal in mind. If it gets these plays to stay in the NFL, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
The Eagles' rule proposal for overtime, basically to make playoff overtime the same in the regular season, meaning that if you score a touchdown first, the other team still gets a possession. That did pass. The only difference with what passed was that the overtime period in the regular season will stay 10 minutes, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I think you can add those 5 minutes. The Eagles proposed 15 minutes because a touchdown drive can last a long time, and then you're not really playing against the other team. You're playing against the clock too.
Yeah, that struck me as well. If you're going to change it, and I like the change, but it's got to be 15 minutes. I mean, you could, heck, I mean, that the Eagles could drive 13 minutes with the way they run the offense and go score, and it's going to be tough for the other team to get down and score. So, but I like the change, and I think it's a positive one.
Yep. They expanded replay assist. I think that makes sense. The more you do that, the better. And that was really the big takeaways from the rule changes. And we'll see what happens with that tush push in May. I think it has a good chance to get voted on then, and we'll see what happens.
And it'll still need 3/4 vote to pass in May?
It will, yeah. It would need 24 of 32. The rules can't pass without it. So can they basically reword this and get 8 more votes?
Yeah. Did they vote on the change in the playoff format as far as the division winners?
And that did not happen.
They didn't vote at all?
No, I don't believe it passed.
Oh,
it's a little different. That's a bylaw proposal. It's a little different than the rule proposals, but that didn't go through.
Good. Yeah, I don't like that one either. All right.
Well, so that's one where, from a different perspective, owners like the idea that they have a 1-in-4 shot to host the playoff game. That's revenue, right? So you see it through a different lens than a fan who's watching saying, well, that's unfair that team X had a better record, but they're a lower seed. You see it from the perspective of the owners. And ultimately, it's a business, and that's the way they operate.
Good stuff.
Speaking of the owner, a long session with Jeffrey Lurie, about 40 minutes. I figured we can just kind of go through some of the takeaways. Did you print it?
I did.
You have a printer at home?
I do.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's archaic. I don't have a fax machine anymore, but I do have a printer.
Wow. Why'd you print it?
I feel like just reading it on the page, I just I notice more than when I'm reading it online, maybe, for something like this. I don't know.
I'm
I just wanted to have it here as we're talking about him. I didn't realize it was going to be 46 pages. But
I once printed out the entire collective bargaining agreement at work and kept it on my desk in a binder. So I guess I can't. And that's like a 2,000-page document.
I don't think it's that long, but it's pretty long.
Yeah. Other big takeaways from Jeffrey Lurie. We can just kind of go through them. I have a list of some things in front of me. The tush push was a big topic of conversation. He was asked about a contract for Nick Sirianni, and after saying they don't talk about contracts publicly, he basically took it as far as he could take it in saying that, yeah, Nick's going to get an extension. You're going to hear about it soon.
Yeah. And similarly with Howie, he was asked how long Howie's contract is for, and he said, "Oh, I don't get into those kind of details, but a long, long time," which is pretty funny. And it sounds like he's gotten at some point, and they don't really announce Howie Roseman contract stuff, but it sounds like he got another promotion. I mean, he's GM for life.
They should call him. They should have fun with a new title. Call him like Football Czar or something.
Yeah, I don't think he would like that. He doesn't like. I don't think. But
I'm happy he's back to general manager, by the way, because for a long time he was executive vice president of football operations, which is a mouthful and it takes a long time to type.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean the nucleus isn't going anywhere, and even Jeffrey even talked about, he was asked about his son and how Julian, and how he's kind of been brought along as the heir apparent, and he said he basically said, I'm not going anywhere quite yet. I'm still a young guy. He's basically saying like there's nothing imminent here, which is I thought was notable.
Yeah, I agree. And he kind of threw it in there when he was asked about Julian, which, look, Julian has been a topic of conversation in recent years, ever since he got an official title within the organization. And he's visible. I mean, I saw him down here in Palm Beach all week. He's very visible before games. He's visible at practice. He's really around the team quite a bit. And
more than his dad.
At times, yeah. I mean, Jeffrey, in the off season, he's down here in Florida quite a bit at his home. He likes it down here in South Florida, and I don't blame him. But yeah, Julian's around a lot. And Jeffrey said something on Tuesday that I'd never really even considered. He said he's kind of happy that Julian is as into this as he is, because it's true. Like, we all just always assumed that his son would take over one day, but you never really know. Like, if that's not his thing, maybe it's not his thing. But it does seem like Julian Lurie is involved. He's going to continue to be more and more involved, and eventually one day it will be his team.
Yeah, and I can't imagine a better mentor or teacher. I mean, it's no guarantee that he'll be successful at it, but I like the fact that they're bringing him along this way. He's getting a little taste of each department as he goes. Jeffrey, I think he said this before, but he made an interesting point. He's like, I didn't grow up in Philadelphia. He did. I mean, he's been a Philadelphia sports fan all his life. Jeffrey was a Patriots, Celtics, Red Sox fan all his life till he moved here. So I thought that was an interesting distinction.
Yeah, I agree with that. In general, him talking about Nick Sirianni and the job he did last year, it just puts it in a perspective that this time a year ago, talking to Jeffrey Lurie, and every question, or just about every question, surrounded the idea that, hey, why'd you bring Nick back after that collapse in 2023? And we know that he thought about firing him, and he ultimately made the decision to keep Nick, get new coordinators to pair with him. And then a year later, they win the Super Bowl, and we're talking about this extension coming down for Sirianni at some point very soon.
Yeah, and a lot of the questions, I thought he was really, and I'll tell you what, I think I slacked this to you, but I thought it was one of Jeffrey's more, he's very focused. Like, he can sometimes in the past, he's really rambled. An answer can get really long, and along the way, he forgets what the question is, and he just kind of goes on. But he was really focused today. I thought he was really well-spoken and just made some great points. And, it was, I thought it was one of his better pressers he's ever done. And he's been doing this a long time. I was impressed. There's a lot of good information there. A couple other things. I mean, he talked about, I thought it was kind of cool. He talked about the parade and just what a special day that was. And he kept saying, I just don't have any words to describe that feeling. And it was just really genuine. And I mean, it's got to be overwhelming to build a football team and then see 2 million people come out and like celebrate it. And, a lot of the younger Eagles fans don't remember Jeff Lurie was not a popular person around here for quite a while as an owner. And, the first few years it was, Kotite and Ray Rhodes, and there wasn't a lot of winning going on, at least not in the postseason. And then Andy was not a popular hire. And then they started losing NFC championship games under Andy. They had good regular seasons. And then they had, a dry spell. Donovan kept getting hurt. And then he hired Howie. And, it took a while there too, other than 2008, which was kind of a fluky thing after winning 9 games. So really, it wasn't until Howie was reinstated and they started, going to Super Bowls frequently. I think that Jeff Lurie, just like in the last 10 years, has started to become I think people are really understanding what a good owner he is. I think he's one of the best that's ever been in this city. And, it's important to remember that, I think. I think a lot of younger fans probably don't know about that. But, yeah, he was not a popular guy for a long time.
And I asked him today about his legacy and if that's something he
That was a
thinks
good question.
about.
Dave was getting in there with some good questions today. You got to check out the video.
Thank you. Uh, because I know that some people really care about that stuff and some people don't, and some people do and they say they don't, and you don't really know exactly what's what. But he said the only thing really driving him right now is to try to win another one. And uh, look, if he does that, look, his legacy is already cemented. But he's one of the better owners in the league, and if he keeps doing this, he's going to go down as one of the best owners in NFL history.
I agree. I mean, he's now he's been to 4 Super Bowls in 21 years with 4 different coaches, 3 quarterbacks, 4 coaches. But yeah, I think he's a Hall of Famer now. I really do. There's not a lot of owners who have achieved what he's achieved, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. I mean, they're going to be really good, even losing the players they lost. So I think his legacy is still. But I liked his answer, and he said, "I'm hungrier than ever to win another one," which is pretty cool to hear the owner say.
Yeah, he was asked about Brandon Graham, who at his retirement press conference said he's going to sit down with Lurie for dinner at some point and figure out what his role in the organization is going to be. They haven't had that dinner yet, but Jeffrey basically said, "Yeah, we're going to find a way to keep this guy around forever."
Yeah, that was really cool to hear. He's, we don't know what he's going to be doing, but he's going to be in the organization as long as he wants, which is, I think, great news for Eagles fans, and just to have him be part of the organization. And knowing BG, like, he's not going to be some kind of figurehead. It's not like he's just going to come in and, talk trash at practice to the O-lineman. I mean, he's going to want to have a role, like an actual role. I don't know what it'll be. And I think all those guys, I mean, whether it's Barwin, who's got a really important role now with the developmental program, Sproles was with the team for a while. Selleck has been with the team. They'll find ways to. I mean, those are valuable guys. They're smart. They know ball. They know talent. They know, they've all had great coaches. So I think it's a real opportunity, and this is kind of a relatively new thing for the Eagles to bring back former players like this. You can't do it too much, and certain guys aren't cut out for it, certainly. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, I love Shady, but I'm not sure he's a guy you want in your building every day. But for a guy like BG, I mean, it's a great fit.
A couple little things here. He was asked about the White House visit, which is scheduled now. Obviously, the Eagles didn't go the last time they won the Super Bowl in 2018, I guess, at that point. He said there are different circumstances then than there are now. He said there was no reticence about accepting the invite, but it'll be up to individual players. It's optional, like they don't have to go, but he said there was no reticence about accepting that invite. It's part of a long-standing tradition.
Yeah, he kept calling it the White House visit. We were invited by the White House. He was very, very careful the way he worded it.
Yeah. And look, I think that we don't have to get too deep into that. In a way, it's like a no-win situation for a team. There's no way to escape that without making someone mad. Like, there's just not.
Yeah.
I think this makes sense. It's a long-standing tradition. You go, you do the photo op, and you get out.
Yeah, you'll probably go. You probably go, right?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, some media's down there. That'd be cool experience.
Yeah, maybe I'll head down.
Yeah, make sure you don't have that knife in your bag like at Radio Row. Did we ever tell that story?
I don't know. It was not we were at the Super Bowl going to Radio Row, and the one security guard kept telling me I had a knife in my bag, and I was like, I don't. And he's like, you do. And I was like, I don't. You can look in my bag if you want. And he's like, well, you do. And how long did that go on?
Well, I was already in there. You were with Alex, I think.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think it was a flash drive that like flips out, and he saw it. And eventually they were like, just go. I was like, okay, thank you.
But from what it sounds like, you kept saying, look in my bag, and he wouldn't do it. He just
didn't want to look in it. I was like, well, what are we doing here then if you're not going to look in it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was annoying.
Anyway,
hopefully that doesn't happen to me again. Anything else from Jeffrey Lurie that you wanted to hit?
Um, in his opening remarks, I thought he made a really good point. He talked about how he just talked about how like fans see the players and they see the coaches, but I think it's a really fair point that I mean, how many employees do the Eagles have? 300. I don't know if you include, from nutrition to to trainers to the hydration people. You think about the advertising, promotions, marketing, everything. It takes everybody. I mean, everybody's got a part when you win a championship, um, and so I think he's really good at hiring people that are really good at hiring. I think that's one thing we've seen over the years, and they promote from within constantly, which is I think really healthy for any company. And yeah, I just like that he's like, look, if you're watching the game, you see Jalen, you see Devontae, but there's like 300 people that have a role in us winning a championship, and that's true.
Yeah, it was well said. Let's take a quick break. We have a lot to get to on the other side because we also talked to Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni this week.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
We are back on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. Ruben Frank and Dave Zangaro, still down here in Palm Beach, Florida at the NFL owners meetings. Rube, let's get into what Howie Roseman had to say this week. If you're looking for that video, it doesn't exist. Howie's session during the owners meetings is just with reporters, a little more casual, but some good information did come out of it. He finally got a chance to explain the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade, which to me was kind of the big item we had to address with Howie because it's this move that really surprised everyone, and it's a really unpopular move as well. And he basically said what the team's message was at the time they made that trade is that basically they have priorities they want to hit, and not just in the past, but looking forward to the future. They clearly didn't identify him as one of those priorities. They have other contracts coming down the pike, and because of that, they ended up trading CJ.
Yeah, and I think all that is true to an extent. I just think there's more to it that they're not. Look, he can be difficult, and he's, when you get CJ, you're getting a lot. You're getting an incredibly talented guy who's a playmaker and is going to get a bunch of interceptions and big hits. But I think he can be difficult, and I just think that's part of the equation here. I don't think it's all of the equation. And I like CJ, and I think he brings so many positives to a team, but that's a real thing. And I still think that was a significant part of this trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's significant in the fact that that's a part of the evaluation of the player, right? Like when you're identifying who you want to keep long term, like the entire evaluation process has to be figured out. And they told you, like, they can say whatever they want. Their actions tell you that they didn't prioritize him as one of those players they wanted to keep here long term. They could have paid him, but like Howie's mentioned all offseason, if they do that, it has to come from somewhere else, and they weren't willing to do that. They prioritized Zach Bond this offseason. Going forward, we know the names, right? Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, eventually Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. CJ was not in that group for them. So that's what led to the trade. And, I think the return on the trade makes it tough too, because they get back, it's a pick swap and a player who just hasn't been very good in the NFL. And I think that's what made it hard to swallow too.
No doubt about it. I mean, I'll be surprised if Kenyon Green ever has a role on this team. I know it's easy to sit here and say he'll compete. He was a first-round pick. He'll compete at right guard. I'll be surprised if he ever wins that job.
I might be a little less surprised than you, but we can get into that. We have a long time for that discussion. Dallas Goedert, and we can kind of include what Howie said and what Nick said. Basically, Howie said there's no update on that situation, but he also didn't push back on any of the reports out there about Goddard potentially being a trade candidate. And he basically intimated that, his situation with the team is up in the air. And then Nick Sirianni on Tuesday said, well, he's on the team right now. And whenever you say a player's on the team right now, it means there's a good chance he's not going to be on the team going forward.
Yeah, it was both of them. It was very, very clear that I just don't see Dallas Goedert being here. I just don't see it. And if you watch, well, you can't watch Howie, but is audio out there? How's that work?
No audio.
No audio. Well, yeah. I mean, neither one of them gave any reason to believe that Dallas Goedert will be an Eagle in 2025. And I mean, I get it to an extent. He's missed a lot of time. He's 30, but he's a really good player. And with all due respect to the two guys they signed and Grant Calcaterra, they're not Dallas Goedert. And look, maybe you draft a guy in the second round, the third round, fourth round to be your starter. That's an unknown. Although I'll tell you what, with Howie's track record over the last 4 drafts, you like their chances. So I get it. You know, he's not a $15 million player. He's not an $11 million player. And if you play half the season, I mean, that's really tough. So the whole theme of this offseason has been getting younger, and that's what they're going to do at tight end.
Yeah, getting younger and cheaper in a lot of ways, and paying an aging tight end who's been injury prone doesn't really fit in with that. And it was also notable, Nick Sirianni, after mentioning that Dallas is still on the team right now, started talking about all the other players who have left. So I think it kind of tells you where they're at. Now, some of that could be posturing from the team, because I think if there's any avenue for Goedert to be back this year, it would have to be with a significant pay cut that he would have to agree to. And from his perspective, he doesn't want to do that. He'd rather end up somewhere else where he can get some kind of a long-term deal. I don't know which team is going to line up to trade for him with the contract the way it is. And basically, to kind of line it up, his cap hit is like 11 mil this year, but in cash, he's set to make like 15 million. And that just doesn't go with the rest of the Eagles offseason. So it kind of seems like he's not going to be here, and the draft could determine what happens to, if the Eagles draft someone, then they lose some leverage, but we know they have a tight end for the future. And I think there's another possibility that a team is on the market for a tight end, that they want to draft one and they get left out. Then all of a sudden that can become a potential landing spot for Goedert.
Yeah, I don't think he has a ton of value right now. And I mean, look, you look at the way he played in the postseason. He's always been a big time postseason player. But when you look at the whole body of work, you have to look at the injuries that have just piled up year after year. If I'm Dallas, I don't think there's a team out there that's going to give him a ton of money.
And the problem is now, we're so deep into the offseason that teams have spent their big money.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So I'm not sure what his, what the upshot will be for him. Yeah, we'll see, but I don't think it'll be here. Although,
that's certainly the indication we got this week.
If I'm Dallas, I know he wants to be here. He's drafted here. He's played his whole career here. He's been here 7 years. If you know you're not going to get a ton of money anywhere, would you agree to a significant pay cut just to stay here? And would they keep him under those circumstances? Yeah,
and what is a significant pay cut? What does that look like? I don't think we know that right now. But yeah, it's fascinating. And look, I don't think anyone would think they're a better team without Dallas Goedert than with him, and that's what makes it a difficult decision, right? Because if there was an easier way it would be difficult. So yeah, fascinating. I mean, that's the biggest question mark leaving the owners' meetings as we enter April now of this offseason is what happens with Dallas Goedert, what happens to that position.
Yeah. And, it's, I think going to every season since 2018, we've always kind of said, this is the year Dallas is going to put it all together, 80 catches for, I think there's a healthy Dallas Goedert. You're looking at 75 to 80 catches, 1,000 yards, and 13.5 yards per catch. He's a guy that gets down the field, with the ball in his hands. He has a lot to offer when he's healthy. He's just never had that, never made a Pro Bowl, never really been able to put together a full season of elite production. He's been a really good player and a great player in the postseason. I think he's the Eagles' leading all-time receiver in the playoffs. But you just feel like his career could have been so much more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's like really wishful thinking to think that all of a sudden at age 30, he's going to be able to stay healthy. That's just not the way it works.
Right.
There are exceptions to that, and maybe things line up for him in the future, but it's hard to imagine that.
Yep.
Howie talked again about the importance of playing young players. It's something that he brought up before the 2024 season. And when he said it, we're like, well, let's actually see if Nick does it, because I think that there had been this hesitance to play young players for whatever reason. Maybe Nick didn't trust them as much. Maybe the coordinators at that point didn't trust them as much. But in 2024, the Eagles got great contributions from their young players, and Howie basically said that's got to continue with the way this roster is structured.
Yeah, I think he was asked about, do you want to put those guys out there and give them the chance to fail? He's like, no, I want to put them out there and have them be really good players. So they have been. I mean, they're on a real run with stocking the roster with young talent. It eventually leads to this issue of you've drafted too well. Now you can't afford these guys.
It's a good problem to have. It's
a good problem to have, but it's an unusual one to have. And it's something Howie's learning how to navigate now. But, we talk about the guys like Sweat and Milton Williams and, the guys that, Dallas. I mean, who would you rather have, those guys or Jalen Carter and Zach Bond and, whoever, Cam Jurgens and Landon Dicker? Landon's got his contract. But, I mean, you rather have this young nucleus. I mean, they still have a lot of really, really good young players on this roster and got to keep them. And, when you prioritize, I just think this whole approach makes sense.
Yeah, and it's like a little bit of a logjam of young talent from the 2022 draft, 23 and 24. I mean, they have hit at an astounding rate that it's going to be hard to duplicate that, but they also have all these picks. This year, 8 picks. Next year, maybe 11 or 12, depending on one of the comp picks. But they've got a lot of them. And it doesn't mean they're going to draft that many players, but it gives them a chance to continue to be successful in the draft.
Yeah. And you got to be really encouraged. I think the only guy they've drafted in the last 4 years who hasn't started a game for them. Now, I think everybody they've drafted in the last 4 years has started at least one game, I think. So now a lot of those were like that year-end game where, but yeah, I mean, Howie's track record over the last 4 years. I mean, he's probably drafted more. I looked this up. This is crazy. This is my 10 obs this past weekend. Second round picks, Miles Sanders in 19, right? Jalen in 20. Landon in 21, Cam Jurgens in 22, all Pro Bowlers. He drafted a Pro Bowler in the second round 4 straight years. No team has ever done that in NFL history. Yes, I looked it up.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And a lot of teams haven't drafted 4 Pro Bowl. The Jets drafted 1 Pro Bowler in the second round in the last 45 years. Howie's done it 4 years in a row. And if J-Jaw makes a Pro Bowl, it'll be 5. No. Actually, Goddard would have been 18 if he ever made one. It would be 5 years in a row. Then they didn't have one the next year. But I'll tell you what, nobody would be surprised if Cooper DeJean makes one or more than one. So
yeah, certainly.
I mean, the Eagles in the second round, and I actually put their top 10 second round picks versus their top 10 first round picks in history. And like your second round, you're talking about Eric Allen, Brian Dawkins, Randall. You're talking about some really great players. And Shady, Deshaun, yeah, Cooper DeJean. So I think Ertz was a second round pick, I believe, right? Wes Hopkins. I mean, I don't know how many teams have drafted this well over the years in the second round. They've obviously had some big misses. I mean, you can have a bigger miss than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but yeah, it's interesting to look at. Maybe I'll write about that leading up to the draft. I probably do every
2
year.
J-Jaw shots in
I know. I feel bad.
3-minute span.
Good kid, but it just didn't really work out.
It did not. Anything else from Howie that stuck out to you, or do you want to get to Nick?
Let's get to Nick.
Let's get to Nick. It was very funny. So the way the setup was at the Breakers this year, which is a beautiful resort, by the way. I can't believe they let me walk through there without like tackling me and sending me out. But now this year, the breakfasts for the coaches are outside in the tent, which is like, we're not roughing it. It's like a tent that's not permanent, but about as permanent as a tent can be. There's AC in there and everything. But they put Nick in the back corner of that room. I got there probably about an hour and 15 minutes ahead of time. And I got one of the last seats available. The Eagles beat is insane with this. It's tough to get a seat. And then you're looking over at Carolina and Dave Canales' table, and there's no one there until he sits down at 7:45.
Who do you think was the first person at Nick's table
today?
Yeah.
I don't know. There were 2 or 3 when I got there. I think it was Elliott Shore Parks, Brooks Cabina, and Bob Brookover were there when I got there. I took the next seat, and then I think the last 2 were Zach and Bo.
I would have guessed Zach was there by like 4 a.m., but apparently not.
No, I've never not gotten a seat. I'm very particular. I need to get there because standing and hovering over a table trying to hear for a half hour is really tough.
Yeah, it's not fun.
But anyway, they put him in the back corner this year. And aside from already the largest media contingent that goes to this event, the Eagles also just won the Super Bowl. Oh, yeah. And the Tush Push has been the talk of the meeting. So it was kind of a crazy scene around Nick Sirianni today.
And he enjoyed it, right?
I joked that he needed a Tush Push just to get to his seat today.
That won't work next year.
He was asked about the contract. He said that'll take care of itself. And I think we know that's the case. He did talk about CJ Gardner-Johnson because him and CJ were close. And he always said he saw a little bit of himself in CJ. And you can see that. Like, we never knew Nick as a player, but he certainly has that edge to him. You can see him talking trash. And I think he liked that about CJ. But he said he understands why the decision was made. And he feels like they have players to kind of fill that void, especially like the non-playing side of it on the roster as it stands.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, we all saw what it looked like without him in 2023, and they were 10-1 at one point. So, but when it started falling apart, he's the kind of guy you want around to bring that energy and bring that attitude and that edge. So, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen again just because he's not here, but he does bring a lot to the table that, it's easy to say there's guys who can replace that, but, we'll see.
Mm-hmm. He mentioned particularly Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Cooper DeJean, he mentioned. And look, I think in general, they have a better nucleus now in terms of that than they did then.
I think Nolan's the one guy who comes to my mind who maybe is closest in personality to CJ. I mean, he's got,
there's a nastiness to Nolan.
He's got a nasty streak, really good player, fearless. He'll be the first guy to jump into if there's a fight or something, he'll be the first guy in there. If he's not already in the fight. So, I could see Cooper, and I think Cooper is a guy that in year 2, I mean, that's going to be a big jump for him as far as like now you've been through it. You kind of know. I mean, he played great. He played unbelievable as a rookie, but they both did. But I think in year 2, you come out of your shell a little bit more. And we started to see it at the end of the year. But he's a pretty quiet. They're both pretty quiet guys, but I could see Cooper really having a big chunk of that role.
Yeah, you mean him and Quinyon Mitchell?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the two. Yeah.
Scott Loeffler this is the hire that we didn't get to hear about until after the combine. So this was Sirianni's first chance to address the new quarterbacks coach. He said they went through a pretty exhaustive process to find Loeffler, who was the head coach at Bowling Green most recently. In addition to working with Jalen Hurts, he also mentioned some of the fresh ideas that Loeffler can bring. And I don't want us to overlook that element, because when you promote from within at the offensive coordinator, not to say that Kevin Patullo won't have his own ideas that are different than what Sirianni had or what Kellen Moore had, but I think it's more likely that a lot of them are going to kind of fall in line. You need some fresh stuff. So I think Parks Frazier, who's the new passing game coordinator, is going to bring some of that. But then Loeffler, who has been a head coach, who's been successful at that, I think that is an element that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, and that was one of the first things Nick mentioned about him. So that's really important. And that is one thing, when you have the same staff year after year after year, you can get stale. And I like the fact that Nick is always looking for that. He's always looking for new ideas, new ways to do things. Because, I mean, everyone's going to study everything the Eagles did on offense this year. And if you come back next year and do the same stuff, it's not going to work. So that's critical.
Yeah, and obviously Loeffler's main job is to coach quarterbacks, to get the most out of Jalen and the rest of that room. But there's extra stuff too.
Yeah, and look, you can have coaches who've been there for 5 years who are still bringing new stuff to the table. Maybe you saw some other team do this play or that play or whatever. So, I mean, it's not like you're going to get totally stale just by having the same staff. But I think there's a lot of value in bringing in. And, you know, Scott has – I mean, there's no connection with Nick other than Ohio. Bowling Green's not that far from Mount Union. And my college is right in between them, Ohio Wesleyan. So if you're ever making that drive, Dave, from Bowling Green out to Mount Union,
I pray I'm not, but yeah.
Stop in Delaware, Ohio, Branch Rickey Arena, Selby Stadium, some top of the line Division III facilities. Really good chemistry building. The chemistry building is second to none. Anyway, so yeah, it was. I'm looking forward to seeing how that whole dynamic works with those two new guys.
Yeah, and he did talk about Patullo a little bit, just how excited he is for Kevin to get a chance to put his stamp on this offense. Because, look, I understand why Patullo and Sirianni get lumped together. That it makes sense, right? He literally flew on the plane with him from Indianapolis. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what Patullo brings to that job and how he handles play calling, but also the day-to-day grind and game planning and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably question number one going into the year will be his play calling.
Sirianni talked about some of the new players they got, and one thing really kind of caught my ear. He talked about Avery Williams, who we haven't really talked about very much. He's kind of been an under-the-radar signing. They list him as a return specialist, but Sirianni today, like unprompted, started talking about all the ideas they have to get the most out of Avery Williams. And here I am, the last question of this presser today. I'm asking a follow-up about Avery Williams, and he wouldn't tell me what position room Williams will be in. Remember, Williams they list him as a return specialist. He played corner early in his career. He played some running back, but eventually Nick did tell me he'll be on offense. So however they're planning on using him will be on that side of the football. I don't know what's going to come of that, but sometimes coaches have ideas for certain players based on a skill set. It seems like he just met Avery right before he flew out here, and it was like fresh on his mind, but it's something I'll be keeping an eye on in OTAs and then training camp.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly have a plan for him to do something, and kind of that Ronnie Brown role, I guess. But yeah, we'll see. These things don't. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'll be skeptical until I see it.
Yeah, me too. But anytime there's the possibility of like any kind of gadget player, sign me up. I'm excited.
Yeah, and they never do anything. Who's the last one? Who really made an impact in that kind of role. What's that?
Take it back. Let me have my moment on April 1st to think about Avery Williams in this offense.
I can't wait to see Avery Williams day one of OTAs, see what he can bring to the table.
See, that's what we need. That's all we need. It's a little Dave's Positivity Corner at the end of this podcast.
We didn't have too many of those last year.
Yeah, we didn't. That's like a thing of the past. This team doesn't lose.
Yeah, we had one Dave's. Did we do one after the Washington game? I don't even remember.
We probably did.
Probably did. We had one the last 17 games of the season.
You'll like this. I had a chance to chat with Jeffrey Lurie this week, and I won't share a lot of it, but I did tell him that when they were 2-2, I was starting to plan a trip for February. He goes, "We won a lot of games after that." Yes, you did. And my trip never happened, but it was a fun ride.
It was quite a year. Sometimes I still can't believe they've been to 3 Super Bowls in 8 years and won 2 of them. Sometimes it just strikes me. I'm like, because I mean, I covered this team from 87 to 2016. And I mean, they made 1 Super Bowl and in Jacksonville, and it was a close game, but you never really felt like they were going to win it. And then, it's become a common occurrence here. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, the Zangaro era has been really fruitful for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think I look at it as more like, like BG had his best years late in his career. So
okay, I like that. All right, let's wrap this up. We didn't have any time for emails today. We promised the next one will be a mailbag, and we'll get to them over the next few weeks. So if you have one for us, email us, eagle-eyed-NBC-uni. That's eagle-eyed-NBC-UNI.com. And if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast and you appreciate us, do us a favor. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, any final words?
No, enjoy the rest of the week down there in Florida.
I will try to do that. For Ruben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.